Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for On the Money, presented by Embassy
Let it play.
National
Let
Bank.
it play a little bit. There we go. Okay, good. That music is available for license, by the way. Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of On the Money. We are the #1 small business show on Business RadioX. The show is presented by Embassy National Bank. Embassy National Bank is a nationally chartered financial institution whose deposits are insured by the FDIC. And on this show, we discuss topics designed to help small business succeed, because at Embassy National Bank, we're proud of how we help small business. I'm Joe Moss, and I'll be your moderator. I'm also the president at Embassy National Bank, and we welcome you to the Subaru of Gwinnett studio. So today we're going to talk about leadership, engagement of employees, getting everybody on the same team, but we're going to approach it in a very different way than I've seen before. And but when I heard about it, it clicked, and I went, yeah, I get it. So welcome, Alan Schaefer.
Thank you very much. So you're the one that gets it.
I did get it, yes.
I'll be here all week.
Okay. And he runs a company called Banding People Together, and it's bandingpeopletogether.com. And Alan, you tell them. Tell them about your background and what you do.
Wow. Well, my background's a little Forrest Gumpish all over the place. I am a recovering entrepreneur and recording artist, consultant. And I spent a good bit of my adult life building businesses and touring the world as the lead singer and frontman for the Atlanta-based band 5 Star Iris. And I was having some problems with my band one day. Imagine that. And I was out in Los Angeles having kind of one of these LA moments, and there was a gentleman named Briggs Ferguson, who was the CEO of a company called City Search. And he was a friend of mine, and he was actually, if I back up, in 1993, there was this brand new thing called the internet. You guys heard of this thing?
Yeah.
I remember at the NASDAQ International Business Plan Competition being told it was a fad. I wish I could remember the gentleman's name just to remind him.
Just like Bitcoin's a fad, right?
Fad, yes. Fad. It's a fad. If you couldn't touch it, taste it, feel it, it was a fad.
Facebook's a fad. LinkedIn's a fad.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And so, but this was a gentleman who was really, really helpful. When we got acquired, it was, as a young guy building and selling a company, and then you get taken over, and they write you a big check, and then the pain and anguish starts sometimes, right?
Right.
But this guy was a great resource, and I kept in touch, and we're having this LA moment, and I said, man, I'm having some problems with my band. And shocker, imagine that. And he said to me, he goes, there's a book that I really think would help you, and it was called 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by a guy named Patrick Lencioni. And it's a leadership fable. And it's essentially this book that is where the Silicon Valley tech company, they're misaligned with their executive team. The board brings in a new CEO, a 59-year-old woman from the East Coast who knows nothing about technology, and it's like a soap opera in terms of them getting along. And I'm reading this book.
I think I did read that book.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's really.
Didn't she walk in the room and say, one of you won't be here for 6 months from now?
Yeah,
or something?
she might have.
Yeah, right.
Hey, raise your hand if you're going to be here. Hey, I wouldn't raise your hand.
Right.
As I'm reading the book, I go, holy cow, we're screwed. And it's them. It's all my bandmates. It has nothing to do with me, of course. And so that was what kind of put me on the path of leadership, behavior, self-awareness, team performance, organizational development, that sort of thing.
So that's how you got started. Where is the company now?
The company Banding People Together, we started really as this team building idea. Like I'd learned about this thing back in 2008 called team building, where people do different activities to bond or learn or whatever it is. And I thought,
go do these challenge classes, courses, all that stuff.
Exactly. And I thought, well, man, I could go into corporate America and teach people how to write songs, and that would just be another flavor. And then someone said to me, well, you need an instructional designer. I mean, respectfully, you seem pretty smart, but you can't just be, hey, dude, I'm the band dude here to write a song with everyone. And so then I had to Google what an instructional designer was and figured that out and built this curriculum around what we do. And since then, we have really, really evolved and grown. We wanted to make more of an impact, and I had this idea of being able to actually measure and teach in a really structured way what it means to work together effectively. And so I found a PhD that was not crazy enough to work with the band guy, and we built a series of diagnostics and assessments that measure collaboration on an individual level, team level, organizational level. So then we started doing training and development, so for all kinds of organizations. And then that has evolved also into a boutique consultancy, so where we do cultural change, transformational change, and collaborative strategy.
Some of your clients are?
NASA, ESPN, Microsoft, Hilton, Sony, Hard Rock.
So you've got what started as, oh my gosh, I got to get 5 people together, has morphed into this. Let me show you how to get 200 to 300 people together.
Actually, more, how do you get an entire organization together?
There you go.
Yeah. So what we call collaborative strategy. And so the interesting thing is, in the business that I'm in, is most people don't know they have a problem. I mean, it is a well-known fact that everyone is a great collaborator by themselves. And so there's a complexity. And there's if you look at kind of the reason why
you need to repeat that. You need to repeat what you just said about everyone has a collaborative ability.
Yes. Well, actually, so sarcastically, because I've been known for a little of that, just warning you, man. Ask anyone, they'll tell you they're a great collaborator.
Right.
They're always great when they collaborate by themselves. That's what we like to joke around. But there's a really good reason why collaboration is so difficult. And the problem that we solve, and really the reason we exist, is to solve the problem of what we call collaborative insanity. And collaborative insanity is a pretty simple idea. You can't just tell people to work together better and expect them to be able to do it. And I mean, if you look in organizations, the executive team, they go out to the fancy retreat, they go to the mountain, and they come back and they put out the tablets. Thou shalt collaborate. Get to it.
And now we're all buddies and friends, and now we should work together better.
Yes, and bonding just doesn't do it. But there's a reason for the insanity. And the reason for the insanity is because what's collaborative to you and what's collaborative to somebody else, not the same thing. It's completely subjective. And so what it means, your experience and the lens that you look through when you are working together with somebody on a number of levels is just really different. And so that creates a complexity. And so what we do, and the reason is that complexity is caused by a very simple problem. There are no collaborative rules of the road. We create in our framework and our methodology the collaborative rules of the road. This is about structure and governance.
For that particular group.
Generally speaking,
Okay.
behaviorally speaking. So how, as an individual, based on your personality preference, your motivation, your way of being, and who you are, how do you show up authentically into the collaborative process? Not changing who you are, but actually understanding how you fit into the sound. And I think it's also fair to mention that what's unique about our methodology is it combines behavioral science, but it's served up in a music-infused, music-centric skin.
All right, let's go back, because make sure that everybody understands the premise. And those of you out there who are not musicians may struggle to understand this, but those of you who are have had their favorite band or they've listened to a lot of music, you think that sometimes that music just evolves on its own. But for a band to come together like some of the great groups, there has got to be a massive effort that comes together.
Yes.
But behind all that, you've got the minds and the creativity of some very, very talented artists. So there's got to be a lot of headbanging that goes on before the lights come on.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is, just like every business, every team, every band has its own way of working, their own process. So the way that somebody like Coldplay achieves success and creates is completely different than someone like U2, completely different than someone like Aerosmith. I mean, you look at someone like Aerosmith, part of their process is Steven Tyler and Joe Perry, knocking the you-know-what out of each other to get to whatever the result. And that's what they
part
do. Of the process.
Right.
And they're honest about it. They've gotten there, and that's that. And so, for any business owner, anybody that's part of a team or managing, leading a team, figuring out like, what is our process? Like, how do we roll? Like, even within a larger organization, you have microcultures. So like this team in accounting versus this team in, as opposed to this team in marketing, or two small teams within one function might really function very differently, collaboratively speaking, for all those reasons we've been talking about, like just the makeup of the people, the personalities, the motivation, where they are in the organization.
Well, so let me make sure I get this. So you help them understand a group, how they come to a decision.
Well, that's part of it. So we're talking about
so that's something that none of us hardly ever think about.
Yes. Well, so the decision-making process is a subset of the larger collaborative process. So think about this. What we're providing is the behavioral and tactical how of when people come together and have to accomplish something, how do we get them aligned? How do we tune out all the noise that keeps us from being aligned? And it can be as simple as what you think is the objective and what I think is the objective are not the same. It can be from a personality perspective. You are very much a detail person and I'm a big picture person. So for whatever reason, we can't connect and speak the same language. And that's what starts to erode the dynamic to where I go, you know what? I don't want to get together. I don't want to work with him on this project because last time it was just a pain because he never got what I was talking about. That type of thing.
Okay. So let's take let's go back and talk about some of the bands and some of the chemistry. Like, let's look at one of the ones that have been together forever, the Rolling Stones. Each of those folks, they have to understand the role that they have, and they've got to be comfortable with the role.
Exactly. That is a phenomenal point. So, if you look at some of the bands, especially like U2 or Aerosmith, like, U2, they'll say, Bono and the Edge and the other two, or if Aerosmith, Steven and Joe and the other three. Everybody has, the differences create the sound.
Mm-hmm.
And people being comfortable with what they bring to the sound, or in a teaming environment, the collaborative environment, is really, really important. You have some people that just based on their personality preferences, they are actually the most comfortable behind the scenes. They'd rather take a bullet than be the lead singer, be out front. And then there's people who only want to be up front and can't stand to be behind the scenes. And so getting to a place where we have what we call clear roles in the band, who does what and why, and getting everybody on a leadership level. My job every day, even with my team, is I've got all these amazingly talented people. My job is to get them in what we call the groove. Where are they going to excel? Where's their sweet spot? That's where I want them.
And make sure they're all on the same page.
Yes. So alignment, here's something really interesting that most people we find don't really even think about. First of all, people think about collaboration as an activity. Hey, you and I are going to get together. We're collaborating. In our methodology, collaboration is a process. And it's a process that has structure, agreed upon set of norms and behaviors. That's that rules of the road piece. But the whole goal is alignment, and it's actually to increase productivity and efficiency,
mm-hmm.
which is counterintuitive because most people go, wait a minute, if I collaborate, it's actually going to slow me down. There's going to be too many cooks in the kitchen. When you have the governance and structure and the rules of the road, you actually increase productivity and efficiency, and the process feels as good as the result. And part of what engages people is you're doing something very important. You're giving people a voice. In any dynamic, in any human relationship, whether it is, man, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, employer, employee, people need to have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they don't have a voice, they can't do something really important. They can't contribute.
Okay.
And that's an important idea.
just taking a quick break. You're listening to On the Money, and we're talking about leadership from a completely different angle with Alan Schaefer. And he's got a company called Banding People Together. Been very, very successful in getting people to collaborate better by showing them how to collaborate and why collaboration is so, so important. I have this theory of, and I did a lot of efficiency work, and my thought was people would come in and ask me, we got to cut staff or whatever, and I thought about that, and I thought about John in accounting, who is very outgoing, very, very smart, understands the business better than anybody in the company, but he's floundering in accounting. And I think about the guy over who's trying to sell the product, and he's really struggling with dealing with people every day, and it's just really affecting him. But he's a good person. So I always came up with this concept: good person, bad job. So what I would do is I would identify those people in the company, irrespective of what job they had, who are the good people, and I would go around and say, we're going to go through an effort here. And you need to know something. Despite what anybody says, you have a job here. I don't know what it is, but you're going to have a job. And so what you do, just like you said, is you try to fit the person into the right job.
Yeah, that's a really important idea when it comes to managing talent. In so many cases, the reason somebody gets put in a job is simply because they're available. On a leadership level, our job is to help people step into their best selves. So how do we put them in a position to succeed? So, when you have someone who maybe isn't very process centric and isn't a dot every I, cross every T person, and you put them in a job that requires coming up with processes, and they're not, and they are failing miserably,
right.
There's a reason. And, a very simple exercise, if you're maybe not getting a level of performance out of somebody, especially in a smaller business that you think is smart, they're smart, they're a good person. Sometimes just taking a step back and going, I'd be really curious to understand, what do you love about what you do here, and what are the things that are like nails on a chalkboard for, like what. And not to say that you're not going to have to do some of those things, because, hey, we're a small business and we need you to wear several different hats. But it's very, very surprising. I mean, I've done this with everybody on my team. I actually had this conversation with my wife, who was working with us at one point. And what I realized was I had such unrealistic expectations of what her level of performance could be. It turned out that if, I was really challenging her to come up with these processes and this structure, well, she's amazing if that structure already exists. She'll knock it out of the park all day long. But I'm sitting there going, well, you're smart. You must not be paying attention. You must not be trying hard. Let me tell you, that's a great dinner table conversation.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Yeah. Hey, honey, I'm going to chop off your head, but hey, could you pass the salt?
Did you know you had all these things wrong about you?
Yeah.
All right.
So just a simple, and I've done this with everyone on my team, and to your credit, you can't be afraid to to pivot and go, you know what, man, there's a whole lot more value here that you can provide. And this goes back to the contribution piece.
Mm-hmm.
We are all designed, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like we all want to be a part of something and we all want to contribute. And so I believe that, your job as a leader or someone running a business is to help figure out where's the sweet spot and how can someone contribute in a meaningful way. That's actually going to trump pay. That's going to trump all these other things. And that's the difference between someone waking up in the morning and going, when they're on their way to work, going, I get to instead of I have to. That's how you get an engaged workforce.
All right, let me talk about that for a minute. And I have I'm going down a path here. So what you just described as the head of the company, is that the most important job they have in the company? Is to get all the people in the right places doing all the right things?
I believe so.
Okay. All right. That's a big fault around with some small business people, and we've talked about this a lot, how they get into a small business because they like doing a certain function, where let's say it's an accountant. An accountant decides, I don't want to work for the big firm, I'll open up my own. And for the first year or so, it's fine. But as they start to grow, they realize, and they have to come to a point where they realize, for me to be successful, I can no longer be an accountant. I have to run a business.
Right.
And then that's a major switch for a lot of people. And then you're asking an accountant now to come in and say, okay, I'm no longer an accountant. I have to run this company. And you may or may not have the tools to do that. And it's a real humbling exercise to go through to determine whether you've got what it takes or not.
Yeah, we all have blind spots. I think as an entrepreneur, every company I've had, we've been small. We've had to, everyone's had to wear a lot of hats. But my job is to get people aligned, doing the right work, and create a place where people want to be. Mm-hmm. And I think when you're a business owner, it's a very unrealistic idea. Like, it's very easy. The blind spot is you can have someone that's been with you for years. They can show up every day. You can train them. You can teach them. They are never going to have they're never going to look through the same lens or have the same level of expertise that you have. And I remember I've got what I call a team of Yodas. I mean, really, really accomplished, successful, senior executive folks from huge organizations that have continued to help me. And I was having some frustration with my team, and this one gentleman said to me, he goes, Alan, for a smart guy, it's pretty dumb. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, the idea that you think that anyone on your team is ever going to see what you can see is absolutely insane. And as soon as you can get right with that idea, then you're going to be able to help. You're going to have a different level of tolerance and patience, and you're going to realize that part of your job of helping them step into their best selves and developing your team is to help people, fill those gaps.
And another blind spot that I have, for example, is in fact, someone showed it just the other day. They came in my office and said, you remember when you were in my office and you said this? Well, that really scared me to death. You laid this thing out. And I go back to that conversation, and I don't remember having said it that way. So the blind spot a lot of times is understand. And then another person, someone asked me in an interview, said, what kind of leader are you? And I had to respond, I have no idea. I tell you what I'd like to be like, but I'm not sure that I am. People perceive you differently than what you think, and it's very important to be able to step around on the other side and understand that.
Yeah, so the work that we do around leadership or collaboration, it's self-awareness. Mm-hmm. It's absolute self-awareness. It's that simple. How do I show up? Is there when you have a really, really intelligent person that's not getting what you're saying, it's really, really easy to go, or just anyone on the other end, it's them. How do they not understand it? How do they not get it? What I've realized is it's my job to help people get it. We had our leadership team call this morning, and there are two things that for a year I've been trying to get our team to latch onto and do, and for some reason I finally got it through. Now, I could have easily put my foot down and said, look, this is what we're going to do. I could have done that 6 months ago. I didn't think that was the right way to go. And unfortunately, it took a lot longer. But today, all of a sudden, I was able to cut through in a different way. And one of the things that I learned, I have a degree in public relations. And one of the things that always stuck with me is, like, it doesn't matter. Like, if the message isn't getting through, it's not the other person's fault. Your job is to figure out how to come up with the message that's going to cut through so they understand. And the question is, do you have the patience and the gumption and the guts to have that conversation 50 times if necessary and not blow your cool? And most of us don't.
Well, the trick for me is that I have to, I try to plant a seed, because I realize that with a lot of people that I deal with, it's got to be their idea.
Yeah.
And so I plant the seed, and all of a sudden it comes up with their idea. Now, you want to say, that's what I've been trying to tell you for the last 6 months, but they don't want to hear that. All you can say internally is, thank God.
Yeah. That's an ego thing. And, I've heard it said, you know what ego stands for? Edging greatness out. That's one of the ways that we get in our own way.
Right.
I mean, yeah, we all know those people. Actually, that's called, in our methodology, it's called a sour note. It's one of the things that our diagnostic points out. So the idea that someone, if someone comes up with a better idea, they can't let go, or they can't let go of their original idea to let it evolve within the group think. We know we've all worked with people like that. It's crazy. It's like you have to Jedi
but that's
mind.
hard. It's hard.
Although if you create the right conditions within the team, we call each other out on all that stuff. And
right.
I sign the checks, and I am not immune. Any time that I exercise one of those, behaviors that derail the collaborative process, it is an expectation for anyone on my team to check me into the boards politely and hopefully with a little bit of respect. But again, under the guise that we are all here to help each other step into our best selves. It's that simple.
Yeah. But everybody has a desire to be noticed and to receive credit for what they feel like their contribution is. So isn't there someone who is, you're trying to be collaborative, and you feel like that you've made a big impact, and at the end of the day you want to be rewarded for that. How do you get noticed in today's world without seeming to being edging greatness out?
Yeah, what's so funny? So again, another one of the sour notes that gets measured and pointed out is does not share credit and glory with others. Right, so there's certain people that we might work with. Here's the person that maybe has 3 people on their team that they're leading, and one of those people came up with the amazing idea. There's the person who takes the credit and says, "Yes, our team, we were great," and then I would maybe suggest that then there's the actual leader who steps up in front of the CEO or the board or whoever it is and say, "Yeah, our team did a great job, and so." Man, they're the one that came up with the game-changing idea. Again, just because someone's managing people does not mean they're actually a leader.
Well, and that gets back to third-person sales is a lot more effective, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I go to Lazarus and say, "You really need to meet this Alan guy," that's coming across a lot stronger than you going to him and say, "You know what? I'm really, really good."
Yeah. Of course. Here's the other thing. We could boil this down to a much more simple fashion. Do you know Rule 51 in the band world?
Yes.
You do?
I know the band. Yeah, I've heard their music.
No. This is the
Rule 51.
Yeah,
no.
Rule number 51 in the world of bands. Just be cool. Right? You want to know what Rule 52 is? Don't be a jerk. You want to know what Rule 53 is? Don't break 51 or 52. We actually all know the difference between right or wrong. We all know what it feels like, to be treated a certain way. It's a choice that we all make.
Well, and interesting, different performers, I think, recognize it early on that they don't want to be in a band.
Yep.
And so they end up staying. Prince, good example.
Yeah.
Although he always put together their great bands, but there was no doubt who was in charge and to who the glory was going.
Right.
But anyway, and then James Taylor comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
He never was in a band all by himself. So different performers or whatever, different people like that, I think credit to them. They understand if they do fit or they don't fit.
Yeah, big difference between confidence and arrogance. In my travels, I've met a lot of people, a lot of very accomplished people, and someone who's really intelligent doesn't have to tell you how smart they are.
Right.
Someone has a lot of power doesn't have to tell you how powerful they are. Someone who's really wealthy, never going to tell you how much.
You'll never know.
Right? So again, that's all. Everyone's different. Everyone has a different way of wanting to be acknowledged or recognized.
And those are the people. I remember my dad had a buddy growing up, and he drove a 15-year-old car, and I played golf with him, and I was younger, and that man never lost it. We played in Naples out in the swamps, and the man never lost a golf ball, because if a ball went in the swamp, we stayed there till that man found the golf ball. Period.
Wow.
In a sense.
Oh, yeah.
Alligators, snakes, everything. I told my dad, I feel kind of sorry for the guy. And he says, and they wore nasty shorts, nasty T-shirt, all these things. said, don't feel sorry for him.
Yeah.
The man's worth $50 million.
You know what's so funny? So relative to the 15-year-old car, I have a 16-year-old car. And as a 30-year-old, I had this idea that I was going to be in a position to retire by the time I was 30 for some reason. I don't know why. So I sold my company by the time I was 30. At least for a minute, looked like I was done. And I actually bought a car. I went from having no car. And my friends were like, man, you should buy a Ferrari. You should buy this. I'm like, man, I don't have anything to prove. I bought a Honda Accord. And I was like, I'm going to drive it until it dies. And now someone's going to give me like $1,000 for it today. Yeah. Like I had to find the title last night. And I'm sad because this afternoon, I've had this car for 16 years,
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
I know.
Parting
is such sweet sorrow.
And the people that talk about, salespeople come in, and I tell them, I got 30 minutes. Okay. Well, they spend 15 minutes telling me about themselves.
Enough of you talking about me. Enough of me talking about me. Let me hear you talk about me.
And we have a guy on the show who says the number one thing is you forget about talking about yourself. Where your credibility will come from is in your ability to listen to them and to solve their problems.
You know what? It's funny that you mentioned that. And so, people ask us, it's like, how do you get all these big clients and whatnot? I don't sell anything. I just hang out and listen. If I can help, if you can identify a problem, or if I can help you identify a problem and I can solve it, I want to try and help you solve it. And if I identify the problem and I can't solve it, but I know someone who can, I'm going to go, here, this person can help you. I have no problem turning away business. We want to help people, and that's the name of the game. And so it makes it pretty simple to do business that way.
Well, I need to do another break. You are listening to Alan Schaefer on the Money, and we're talking about bringing people together. He does it from a different perspective, was very active in a worldwide band and had some band problems, and now has taken what he learned from that, and it helps a lot of businesses bring all their people together. All right. What was wrong with your band?
Well, what's so funny?
And how did you fix it?
Well, I have former band members. We were more like a solo project in band's clothing, and if you asked any of the, and we're all friends, but if you asked any of the, like, the fact that I do this type of work now is so phenomenal to them. I was like a tyrant with a smile. It was a my way or the highway, and if you disagreed, I wasn't going to yell or scream about it, but I was going to wear you down, try and state the case. Arguably, it was, if you think about the band dynamic, you've got people have different ideas creatively, different ideas about the business. Some people are putting in, it seems, more effort than others. Everyone has kind of different pain points in terms of, hey, am I really willing to go out on the road this long and make no money and come back and deal with my wife who's unhappy that I just had a party for 6 weeks on the road and came back with no money, whatever it is. This is just the reality. And, I think you can make the argument that the band dynamic is arguably one of the most volatile collaborative environments on a leadership level, alignment level, performance level, ego level. I mean, just watch behind the music. I mean, it's really crazy, and it's interesting. At banding, man, we're really great at loving each other. We are like the most tight knit band. You could take any combination of any of our people, and you can feel it when we walk in the room, because like for us, there's this like sacred idea that like this is the band dynamic that we always wanted in our bands but could never achieve. Mm-hmm. And so teaching people how to get to that spot's really important. You mentioned Prince. Can I tell you a really quick Prince story?
Sure, absolutely.
With all the Prince stuff that was going around, there's a few things that I think of, and everyone's got their Prince memory, but I have a really unique Prince memory. I was working for Warner Electro Atlantic, the distribution company for Warner Brothers, and I was working for 13 radio promotion people at the same time. Their job was to get singles played on the radio, and one of the Warner Brothers reps came in on like a Thursday afternoon. I was an assistant for 13 people at one time, and dropped off a box of CDs and said, make sure these go out to my P1s, which, the primary stations. I'm like, yeah, no problem. It was the new Prince single. She had promised it that they would have it on Monday, they'd get to preview it, all that stuff, and that Tuesday was ad day at radio, and that's when you play the new songs. And it's Prince, right?
Right.
I get a call on Tuesday morning. Hey, Alan, I'm getting screaming calls from all of my program directors, and they want to know where the Prince single is. You did send it out, didn't you? And all of a sudden, I look under my desk, and as my heart is dropping, I see this box of CDs sitting there. Now, I think that's probably punishable. That's like by death, right?
Right.
And I'm like, oh man, I have made a mistake on a level of such biblical proportion that
you didn't have email, so you couldn't email the song
I
out,
shall
right?
not recover from this. So this is going to be my first firing, but I'm going to be the firee. And there was a guy named Danny Davenport who was my supervisor, and I'll never forget. He calls me into his office, and he knew I was a band guy, guitar player, and he's got his back to me in his swivel chair, and he's like, you really messed up here, Alan. I'm like, yeah, man. Yeah, I know. He's like, I don't know if I can save you this time. I said, man, I understand. This is a tall order. Then all of a sudden he turns around. He's got a guitar. He goes, hey, man, can you show me this Dire Straits lick? And I said, well, let me take a look. And so it's like a cassette, and we're going fat, and I'm like writing out the tab for that stuff, and I show him the lick. I'm like, play it. You got it. Here you go. He looks at me, he hits me on the shoulder. He's like, all right, I'm going to fix this. But I can't save you again if you come anywhere close to something this screwy. So the message for all you business owners out there, people make mistakes, and what's important is, are your people learning from it? And I will tell you that
of course you do,
anytime somebody makes a huge mistake in our moving parts of what we do, I always think about that. Everybody's human, and the question is, is everyone doing their best?
And that confirms another thing we've learned on this show is that people want to hear more about mistakes than they do successes.
Yes.
Because people learn from mistakes, and people like hearing, and not in a morbid way, people who have been able to accomplish things.
Yeah.
When they mentor back, the mentoree wants to hear more about the mistakes than they do all the successes.
I mean, if you think about any movie, nobody's interested in a story of nothing but success.
Right.
We're just not programmed that way, right? So if you just look at the arc of a story, like, people meet, boy, girl meet, they fall in love, they get to, oh no, now there's trouble, tragedy, whatever.
Gotta end it in tragedy.
Or whatever it is. And as the viewer of that story, we want to know, well, how are they going to deal? How are they going to overcome it? And I fundamentally believe that we are defined by how we overcome things, by how we recover. It's just, and some people are better at it than others. And there's a lot of other factors in terms of what makes someone recover well or not.
And as a result, that's why I keep telling all my friends that the Tiger Woods story is not yet finished. His story will be in how he has recovered.
Yeah.
And you will find that he is doing incredible things in areas outside of golf.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's a fascinating thing how we kind of we root for the underdog until then they get on top. And then
are we afraid? All right, I'm going to ask you this. I take Michael Jordan, take Tiger Woods, take pinnacles of success. People are afraid of success, and I think that's why so many people dislike Tiger, is because he was so good. They couldn't relate to it.
Yeah, it's funny. After we sold our company, my twin brother, who was the bass player, I remember reading Opening Creative Loafing, and there was some quote that said, the Schaefer brothers have made the best record their .com money can buy. It was this total slam, and I'm usually the more outspoken, a little more confrontational, aggressive one, and he looked at me and he said, Alan, they never take shots at you when you're number 2. And I went, wow. And it's an interesting thing because, people rooted for it. I mean, for 6 years we starved. I took a $30,000 equity line of credit on my parents' house. I had eviction notices. When I had eviction notices and my girlfriend, who became my wife, had to drive me around and buy me groceries, people were cheering for me. when I sold my company for 8 figures, it was like, oh, you're just the rich schmuck that's
Sure.
buying his way around the music scene.
Sure.
It's nuts.
And always remember that any publicity is good publicity.
Yes.
And which I think there's someone who is campaigning around this country of ours who is playing that little proverb to a T.
Give them something to talk about. I mean, all those reality people, like, it's all calculated. Like, even in the music business, like the actors or hey, if, when someone is on Entertainment Tonight for whatever wrongdoing they did or getting arrested in Hollywood or whatever, or some kind of drama, they usually got a new movie coming out that they're getting ready to.
Absolutely,
it's pretty calculated in this
Sure.
in this kind of reality theater that we live in. It's lame.
Yeah. Well, we could go on and on about all that kind of stuff, but we're out of time. I'm sorry, but I find the conversation fascinating, and I think one thing people should know about musicians and bands are they're very creative people typically, and they're also very, very intelligent people. So if you can get a band together, you probably get just about anything together.
Yes.
So what you do with, and by the way, you need to develop some tools that you can roll out to the small business, whether it be web tools or whatever, and try to take this down, because I think the small business owner probably needs it more than the large company.
Agreed. And I'll tell you, for anybody listening, if you email me at Alan, ALAN, at bandingpeopletogether.com, I've got a white paper that I wrote with the Keenan Flagler Business School at UNC Chapel Hill on building collaborative culture. Will get you thinking differently about what it means to get your people working together. And if you send me an email, I'll send it your way.
Okay, good. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having a great platform.
And we'll do this again. I like to get folks back, so we'll give us a couple months and we'll reach out to you again.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
So anyway, that's our show for today. This has been On the Money, the _1 small business show on Business Radio X. We're presented by Embassy National Bank. As you know, you can follow us on Twitter at on_the_money, then the number 1. Our shows are out at onthemoney.businessradiox.com. Go to iTunes, you can find them also. And we also have a video component that you can see out on the Gwinnett YouTube channel, Business Radio X. So until next time, I'm Joe Moss with Embassy National Bank. And just remember all the things that we have always learned on this show and we talk about. Be careful out there. A lot going on. Think before you act. Leave fear in the back seat, and the one that we like the most around here is stay authentic. Be yourself, and that will go a lot further than trying to be somebody you're not. So with that, have a great day, and we will see you next time.